The rich can't keep getting richer forever, can they? Well, yes, it seems they can. The last 2 years of the global pandemic has changed the life of most of us in so many ways, with some families still struggling to recover. COVID-19 left behind physical and emotional wounds and also many financial hardships, including difficult economic times for many Australians. But while the poor took a hit, the world's richest became even richer, with their personal wealth growing immensely during the pandemic. And it's not just the Jeff Bezoses of the world. I mean, Jeff Bezos' wealth apparently grew $64 billion during the pandemic, or Elon Musk, who saw an increase of more than $126 billion to his wealth, or Mark Zuckerberg, who saw $42 billion increase in his wealth during the pandemic. Australia's wealthy people also became richer. So how did they do this? And how can you join them? Well, that's what we're going to chat about today with Mark Creedon, founder and director of Metropole's Business Accelerator Mastermind. So hopefully by the end of today's show, you'll have some ideas on how to get onto the rich list as well. So welcome to today's show.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
Now, we all know the rich are getting richer, but the question is, what can we learn from them? Sometimes it's as though it seems like the rich are being born lucky and they were inevitable to have success, but that's not really the reality. In our country, where most people are listening to this, I believe anyone can get rich, because it's not like the rich have got any special secrets. After all, the rich just invest in property, shares or businesses like all other ordinary Australians. There's not much else they can put their money into. Well, maybe they can put it into Bitcoin, but I'm not sure that that's an investment. So what is the difference between the rich and the ordinary Australians? What do they do differently? What can we learn from them? And how can we get into that group of people? That's what I want to chat today with Mark Creedon, founder of Metropole's Business Accelerator Mastermind. Hi, Mark.
Hello, Michael. Good to be here.
Now, you're dealing with successful business people, entrepreneurs and investors in your various roles as part of Metropole. So I'd like to, let's unpack this and work out the ways the rich are getting richer. And let's be clear, before anybody gets offended, when we talk about rich and poor, we're not being judgmental. We're just saying that some people have got more financial options because they've got more money, and it doesn't make them better or worse. But I think most people want to become more wealthy, don't they?
I think they do, and I think they should. That's something that we should all aim for, Michael.
Well, I can't remember who it was. It may have been Bill Gates who said it's not your fault if you are born poor, but it's your fault if you die poor.
Yeah, it's a very good saying. I guess it just reminds us that we've all got an element of control over this, don't we?
Yes, we do. And we're very fortunate. Most people listening to this podcast are listening to it from the best country in the world, or in other well-developed countries as well, because I know this podcast goes to lots and lots of countries. It's actually interesting when I look at the statistics, how well we're doing in some of the smaller countries around Europe and Asia and even Africa. But most of the people living in Australia, New Zealand, where people are listening to this, despite all the gloom in the world at the moment, despite all the unrest, despite the economic issues, it's still the best time to be alive. So I believe anyone can become rich, and there are some ways of just copying what others have done. So let's have a look at some of the things that we have worked out the rich do to become wealthy. So what's the first one you'd start with, Mark?
Well, I think, Michael, one of the things that rich people understand is the concept of compound interest. I guess you don't see too many rich young people. I mean, there's those sort of successful entrepreneurs born into wealth, or maybe they develop an app and sort of land on their feet. But the reason you don't see rich people otherwise who are young is because it takes time to grow those assets, Michael, doesn't it?
Yeah, sure. It does. Oh, by the way, they've also learned delayed gratification so that they do allow compounding to work.
Well, they understand that it actually takes money to make money. And that's where the benefits of compound interest are biggest, really, for larger assets, aren't they, Michael?
Sure, because it is. Because in the first year, your $500,000 property becomes $550,000, but the second year it's compounding on the compounding, and so eventually, the longer you hold them, it's like that lily pond story, isn't it? You know, the first time it grows a little bit, and then it doubles again, and the last time, boy, does it double and take up the whole of the pond.
And property is a very, very good example of that. And I guess it's why, property investment is in fact so popular here in Australia.
Well, it is, but it takes time to compound your wealth through property as well. Now, at the moment, people are nervous about property, Mark. They're worried about rising interest rates, about inflation, about the recession that some people say we may have or not. And they hear the world's coming to an end. And you and I have been around long enough to know that the world breaks every 8 or 10 years, and we realise that the world as we know it isn't going to come to an end, is it?
No, it's not going. And it's that saying of sort of, this too shall pass. But we are hearing lots of gloom and doom at the moment. Michael, I was having a conversation with one of my clients this morning. We're talking about, and I shared with him, one of your sayings that it's not about the timing of the market, but it's the time in the market that counts, because he too was listening to all the gloom and doom on the news and talking about, how do I find just the perfect time to get into the market?
Well, of course, last year and the year before, it was fantastic. You could buy almost any property. You thought it was a hot spot. You were getting a special bargain. It was a lot of short-term thinking last year, and the year before, not just in property, but in business and in other areas, and shares and in Bitcoin. But those times are over. So in my mind, it's much better to make a consistent annualized growth of even just 6 or 7%, which a good property should easily do over the next 20 years, and take advantage of that compounding and get that fantastic long-term and tax-effective return, rather than getting a one-off profit, maybe buying something cheap at the moment or buying something secondary last year and getting a lower annual growth. It really is the compounding of good returns. Now, we've all heard the expression, as you said a moment ago, that time in the market is more important than timing the market. But I don't think most investors realise the importance of this. I think they're in too much of a hurry. However, even moderate returns over the long term generate massive wealth. We've seen it with our clients that they just, look, who wouldn't have liked to buy the property their parents bought when they bought it sort of 20 years ago? But I believe in this time when the market's moving, Mark, it actually is important to be much, much more selective. It's moving into the next stage of the cycle of an adjustment phase. Maybe we go back to the concept where we're starting to talk about the rich getting richer. In most developed countries, income and wealth inequality, it is getting worse. And I think the coronavirus made it worse. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting, well, relatively poorer. And it may not be fair, but it is the trend. And it's not going to change. And if COVID's taught us anything, there's actually less middle class in Australia at the moment. Most people think we've got a bell shape of some really rich people at one end of the spectrum and poorer Australians at the other end of the spectrum, and lots of middle class. But in fact, that's not the case. Recently, Mark, I read some Australian Bureau of Statistics figures that showed the wealthiest 20% of Australians own 63% of the private wealth, whereas the lowest 20% own a mere 1% of private wealth.
That's a fascinating statistic, isn't it, when you look at it?
Yeah. Now, again, if we relate this to real estate, which a lot of people are interested in here, if you look at it, the reality of houses is supply of good locations in blue chip suburbs where these wealthy people want to live. It's finite, it's limited. However, our population is growing faster and we're getting expats coming back with lots of money from overseas as well. So it's not difficult to see why there's a growing cohort of people who actually want to buy in those blue chip suburbs. And those people, they seem to have an endless ability to keep paying more than that last person. Again, it's partly due to this distribution of wealth. So most of the wealthiest 20% want to live in those inner city, more affluent suburbs that occupy less than 20% of the capital city in land size. So I guess what I'm saying is play the long game in property, invest in locations that are supported by the laws of supply and demand. It's not about investing for the next short-term trend or fads. In these challenging times, Mark, there are still some fundamentals that the rich believe in. If the rich are investing in those areas, why not pay attention to them?
Well, we're going to talk, Michael, we're going to talk a little bit later about the concept of the long game. We're also going to talk about how you surround yourself with other wealthy people and the benefit of that. So, and that's exactly what you're saying. So, the first is about understanding compound interest, but there's just a couple of other factors that we can practice, and we can then join the people at the top end of the spectrum.
Well, leverage is another one, isn't it? They know how to use other people's money.
Yeah, well, they do. They understand that they get a maximum advantage. It's about understanding debt, Michael, isn't it? It's about understanding debt to buy assets with a plan to generate profit higher than the interest that's paid. And I think the thing that
if I could interrupt you for a sec, Mark, that's still happening now. People are worried about interest rates going up. And that may be 3%, 4%, 5%, but inflation's more than that. So actually interest rates are negative, so to speak.
Yes. So relatively, then it's still cheap money. And Michael, I don't know what interest rate you paid on your first home, but I remember mine was about 17%. And I remember my wife at the time worked for the bank, and at the time women couldn't get the same deal that the men in the bank. But when that did happen, we got a 50% reduction. So we went down to sort of 9%, and I thought I'd won the lottery, paying 9% on a loan, which was relatively still, a very large loan given my salary at the time.
Oh, I remember in those days, for many decades, if your home loan was less than 10%, you were really, really happy. And it's only been the last 11, 12 years where interest rates have steadily fallen after the global financial crisis. But forgetting interest rates, it's really just the concept of using debt, because it's too hard to save your way to wealth. You can't. And of course, it's got to be good debt. So you've got to borrow against appreciating assets. So one of the big differences between the rich and the average Australian is how they go about investing, not their own money, but how they leverage and use other people's money. The average Australian rarely uses leverage. They're scared. They use debt to buy things. Buy doodads, buy goods, buy cars, buy the next iPhone. They also think they've got to pay off their home. In other words, they were taught to get a good job, get a good education, pay off your home, rather than use the equity in there to keep investing.
So the problem with that, Michael, is that if they do build any wealth, it's mostly come from kind of scrimping and saving and using anything that's left over at the end of the month. And so they slowly build up a nest egg. Whereas the wealthy, on the other hand, have actually mastered that art of using money they don't have to build their wealth, haven't they?
They do. So I think the wealthy leverage a number of things. Well, first of all, they're financially fluent, so they understand how to use debt and take them to the next level. But apart from money, I think the wealthy people also know how to leverage relationships. And I'm sure that you see that in your role as business coach to many successful business people and entrepreneurs.
Well, that's right. They surround themselves with people who know better than them or have more experience. I mean, really what they do, Michael, is they have a comprehensive team of finance, investment, business specialists at their disposal, don't they?
Sure. So, again, successful investors build this team around them. They also know how to leverage their time. Now, I know that's something that you just recently ran a great masterclass on. Successful investors don't do it all themselves, but it's much the same as successful business people, Mark.
Oh, very much so. The biggest thing that I see in people in business, Michael, moving to the next level is once they realize that they can actually make higher and better use of their time, they can leverage their time off. They can get people around them doing the things in the business which is not the highest and best use for them, not working in their genius. That's when their business moves really to the next level.
So it's actually understanding the value of your time. Some people don't realize that.
No, they don't. A really interesting thing I often say to this is that if you don't understand the value of your time, then you can never expect somebody else to as well. And that goes right through to the people that work with you, to your clients, to your associates. That you have to understand the value of your time.
Another point of leverage is actually your mind. I think one of the greatest points of leverage is that successful business people, property investors, they just think differently to the average person. The not so rich have a different way of thinking, a different reality. To put it simply, your reality is what you think is real. In other words, your perception is your reality. So what I think stopping a lot of people becoming successful isn't what they know or what they don't know. It's what they think they know that isn't so, that stops them moving forward. They say things like, I can't afford that, or I can't do that. Or a big one is, I already know that.
Well, Michael, as a coach, I mean, the two things I always hear people say is, I know that and I used to do that. And my stock standard answer to that is, I know you know it, but you're not doing it. I know you used to do it, but you stopped. I think.
How often do they say, I tried it once, but it didn't work?
Yeah, more times than I care to hear. But that's probably a good topic for another discussion, to be honest, and understanding why it is that people stop doing things. I think the thing that to become wealthy, Michael, you have to open your mind to a whole new range of ideas. But part of that is to open it to a set of possibilities that are sort of better than your current abilities. And I think it's just too hard. It's too hard, Michael, to become wealthy from the perception or, as you say, your reality, which is based on lack and limitations. And those that we see that do actually move to the next level, either in property investment or in wealth or in business, that they move beyond that limited resource thinking or that thinking around lack.
Well, it's something that you can practice, and it's something that you can improve by reading and learning. But I think it also matters who you hang around. There's benefit in hanging around people who think positively. And I think there's also benefit in having a mastermind group. I know you're part of it. I know I'm part of a separate mastermind group. I know together we have our own mastermind group of clients in Business Accelerator Mastermind, because when you hang around other people who think in a positive way, it changes the way you think.
Well, it does. I mean, I always find that successful people are successful because they've got expert knowledge, they've got skills in very specific niches, and whilst they're experts in their field, they've been smart enough to develop strong relationships which they can call on at a moment's notice. I mean, that they use their network and they have people around them, Michael, that complement their strengths and weaknesses. So where their strengths are, they find they support people who maybe are weaker at those points. But more importantly, where they're weak, they find people who have those strengths.
So while successful people and rich people get a good team around them and also get a mastermind group around them, they also understand the benefit of getting professional help. There aren't many rich people who don't have a comprehensive team, a finance specialist, investment specialist at their disposal. They recognise the importance of investing in their future because they're going to be living in their future for a long, long time. Now, here at Metropole, we've got an award-winning team of property strategists, wealth advisors, buyers agents, property managers. And whether you're a first-time investor or a seasoned investor, why not get in touch with our team to see how we could help you, especially in these interesting, challenging times. And in fact, if you're in business, I guess that's one of the real benefits of being able to share the same business coach as I do with Metropole's Business Accelerator Mastermind. So sure, that's a shameless little ad, but it's actually said on purpose because I believe that's one of the secrets of successful people. They don't see getting professional help as an expense mark. They see getting professional help as an investment.
Well, they do, and something you always say, Michael, is that if you believe that you're the smartest person on your team, then you're in real trouble. So successful people, wealthy people, rich people, they're happy to pay for advice. They're happy to, as I said, they're happy to look at where people have strengths to match where they have weaknesses, and so that they actually, again, it's a form of leverage, isn't it? It's not just leveraging other people's money. Now it's leveraging other people's time.
Now, interestingly, though, beginning investors, they seem to waste time, they waste energy, they waste efforts. They try to do it all themselves, while successful investors put their time into their highest and best use, what you said a moment ago about being in their flow. And it's much the same with business people, isn't it?
Well, it is. And it's funny because I often see business people early in their business, or some people in professional practice even a little bit later, where they just think the best thing they can is kind of do everything themselves. And they think they're saving a lot of money. But they end up, I guess it's like property investing, Michael, they end up getting a secondary result and they're paying a huge learning fee to the market. They either pay too much for their property or they miss opportunities in their business. They miss out on significant growth, significant opportunities. Whereas I think that the clever, the wealthy, the rich, the successful people, they understand that if they can invest in having the right people around them, getting professional help, then it's actually going to fast track their path to success.
Sure. So as we're going through 7 ways the rich are getting richer today so that you can also become one of them, there's no doubt that the rich understand the power of property. Every year, the Australian Financial Review bring out a rich list. More recently, the Australian has. Mark, you and I are old enough to remember the BRW Rich 200 list, and now it's 500. But the answer is that if you find that list and break it down, the majority of people have made their money in property, and those who haven't, who've made it in other businesses, take the cash out of their businesses and invest in real estate.
Well, I think, Michael, every successful person that I know certainly invests in property. I mean, they understand that it can provide passive income. It helps them with stable cash flow. I mean, there's tax advantages, diversification. We could probably spend a whole hour talking about just the advantages of investing in property. But I think if you understand even from a business perspective, I mean, really, you always talk about treating your investment property like a business. But if you are in a traditional business, making your income from that business and turning that income into leveraging that money into property investment is the way you actually fast track that wealth journey.
Another way that the rich are getting richer is that they're financially fluent. They understand how finance works, how tax works, how the law works. Now, that doesn't mean they've actually gone to economic school. In fact, I think most academics and most of those formal educations in those areas, they really don't teach you what you need to know about how the world works, does it?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I just mentioned before the concept of professionals in private practice. One of the things that we find in business is that there are some, and you and I know a number of them, there are some very, very successful and very, very good professionals. They're great at what they do, but they're really not very good at running their business. And the reason for that is they were never taught that. They're taught to be great lawyers, they're taught to be great accountants or doctors, but they're not really taught how to run their business. So getting to understand that financial fluency. And I guess, Michael, we said before that they get professional help. So it's not about knowing everything, again, not about being the smartest person on your team. So getting, a trusted mentor or a team will help immensely, but you actually have to have a solid understanding of how things work, how to make sound decisions, and really it's so that you can then assess the advice that you are getting from professionals.
You've got to know the right questions to ask, don't you? Otherwise, you're not going to get the right answers.
Yeah, 100%. That's very, very true.
Sure. So it's interesting because I know in Business Accelerator Mastermind, there are quite a number of professionals who, when they first see you, think, well, I shouldn't have to do that. I went to university. I've got a degree. I'm smart and I'm intelligent. They're not egotistical or vain. They just can't understand why. And it's actually much the same with, we see quite a number of tradespeople. There's somebody in the air conditioning business who's part of Business Accelerator Mastermind, a cabinet maker, a plumber. Again, they are running businesses, but their business, they were never taught how to do that while they're really good tradespeople. And that's why unless they get a good coach on their side, they're actually never going to get to own a business. They've just got a job.
Well, that's right. A great title for a book, Michael.
Hey, yeah, that's the name of your book, and we'll leave a link in the show note. So to just quickly tell us about your book.
Oh, well, the book is exactly that. It's called How to Have a Business, Not Just a Job, Without Nearly Killing Yourself in the Process. And it's actually from my own personal experience, Michael, where I actually did that. I went to university, I studied, I had a great practice, I was a professional, but nobody ever really taught me how to run a business. So I thought the best way to run it was just to work hard. And then when that didn't work, I worked a bit harder. And of course, what happens is it all falls apart in the end. So understanding that you've got to know the basics of how to run a business, you've got to know how to get the right people around you, and you've got to get the right advice. As you say, by asking the right questions, you can take your professional practice or your business to the next level.
Well, I think many of us were taught by our parents to work hard. And a lot of Australians have come from other countries where that work ethic is also very important, but it only gets you so far because you can only work so hard for so long, for so many hours a week. Well,
that's right. It's like what I call the two-hand syndrome. I mean, with two hands, there's only so many things I can do, whether it's in a profession or a trade. There's only so many cars I can fix. There's only so many, dripping taps that I can resolve. So I have to learn, again, how to leverage other people's time, how to get the right team around me, how to understand the highest and best use of my time. And that's what's going to help me to earn the kind of income that I can then put into property to truly build that intergenerational wealth.
Before we go on to the next two ways that the rich are getting richer, how do you help those people who come to you at Business Accelerator Mastermind who are stuck in that rat race?
Well, the whole idea of the program of the Business Accelerator Mastermind, it's a coaching program, Michael, and it's a coaching program which involves one-on-one work with me, access to you and other professionals within the group, but also some group work so that people actually get this collective momentum. Everybody's moving in the same direction and shared wisdom from some really smart people around them. And it really starts with understanding what is the highest and best use of their time, how we're going to get the right team around them, and how we're going to help them to set some targets in the business that they're going to be able to achieve. So it's about learning how to make more money whilst actually working less in the business.
And I know it works because you've helped me personally. You've been my business coach for over a decade. Interestingly, I'm actually not working less. I'm still working full-time because I'm having fun doing it, but I'm doing different things. So A, I'm in my flow. B, I'm doing things that I enjoy. So it actually doesn't even seem like work, Mark.
Well, you're doing the things that you love to do. And can I say, as a coach, it's one of the great things is to sit back and see that happening. So you're not working less, you're probably working more, but you're having a load more fun. You're no longer in the day-to-day operation of things. And you know that the interesting thing about all of that is you can step out of the day-to-day operations now. Somebody else takes care of it for you, Michael. It all still happens.
That's right. So if you want to use the same business coach I do and be part of the same business coaching program I am, go to metropolemastermind.com.au. We'll leave a link in the show notes. And Mark, you'd be happy to have a bit of a chat with them to see if you could help?
Absolutely.
Now, as we go back to the list of the ways the rich are getting richer, we sort of talked about that at the beginning, but it's really that they're prepared to play the long game. Warren Buffett once said, wealth is the transfer of money from the impatient to the patient.
Yeah, well, I mean, to become successful, to become rich, Michael, requires, I think, both patience and persistence. I mean, becoming successful and rich, it is a long-term investment. I'm yet to find a great get-rich-quick scheme.
Really? I get information in my inbox almost every day about that. And that's what's, I think, unfortunately, stopped a lot of people over the last year or two thinking they were investing, but they were speculating. What about all those Bitcoin schemes that were going on? Many people are prepared to speculate. They look for the next big deal. They look for the short cut. It doesn't make good investment sense. It's not how successful people, it's not how the richest people have built their wealth. I mean, rather than look what's happening now with the latest fad, the latest speculative growth area, look for what has always worked, particularly at this stage of the cycle, in the property cycle, where there's actually going to be minimal growth. And while last year, the year before, all properties went up in value, now it's really going to be investment grade and homes, A-grade homes that are doing well. But the other way that people make money in property at this stage of the cycle is actually growing their wealth through manufacturing capital growth. They actually get involved in renovations or development. But playing the long game, it's something that's in your head. It's a different mindset. It's that concept of delayed gratification. That's very different to the average person who wants to get rich quick.
Well, it is. And interestingly, even though business changes and, market trends change and what people buy and how they buy changes, I mean, the idea of being able to buy something online and get it delivered immediately, the idea of being able to catch an Uber and all these sort of ideas have come in. But you know what? The business principles and the basics often don't change. So going back to some of those basics at a time when the market starts to tighten a little bit is going to be even more important. But all of that really comes down, as you say, to getting it right in your head. You have to think differently. You have to think differently to the average person, Michael, don't you?
Yes, you do. Now, interestingly about the fundamentals, I've just rewritten my first book, How to Grow a Multi-Million-Dollar Property Portfolio in Your Spare Time. My publisher asked me to update it and change it. And interestingly, there were a whole lot of changes in the book from when I'd written it only 2.5 years ago. In fact, I'd first written it 16 years ago. But the things that changed were more to do with the short term, but not the fundamentals. Those chapters based on, so what's going to happen to population growth after COVID and how we're going to live and things like that are going to change a little bit, but the long-term investment and money fundamentals haven't changed.
No, and we find that in business too. And as you know, within Business Accelerator Mastermind, we have clients from a range of industries. And I guess that's the other thing we find is that whilst the product they sell, the service they provide, how they do it, how they're structured, whether they have a brick and mortar or whether they have an online business, all of that is different. All of that varies. But again, the fundamentals don't change even from industry to industry.
Now, the last thing on the list that I wanted to talk with you about, I made a couple of dot points here, we've sort of covered, but it's worth mentioning again. And it's that the rich surround themselves with like-minded people. They know the benefit of, again, being in a mastermind group and thinking successfully by talking the same language as other successful people.
So I saw this great meme, Michael, the other day, and it said something like, if you hang out with 5 poor people, you'll be the 6th. If you hang out with 5 stupid people, ultimately you'll be the 6th. So it really is important to surround yourself. And I guess that's one of the advantages of you and I being in masterminds. It's the advantages of you and I getting to spend time together and getting to spend time with our own network is it's so much easier to pick up great ideas, great concept, and that collective momentum to all stay moving. Particularly, Michael, I think when you've got all this gloom and doom in the media right now, if all you listen to is that and you didn't actually have a network of people that are saying, look, that's just really good entertainment, don't listen to that. Instead, listen to experience. That we've seen this before, and we know that, like most things, this too shall pass.
Well, we know that many investors feel isolated. They don't have other people to speak with about this. And there isn't a great investment mastermind group. Sure, we've got the private Facebook group where people communicate. If you haven't joined my Facebook group, go to Facebook and go to the Property Update private Facebook group. But Business Accelerator Mastermind is that sort of a venue where people can help each other. They just don't only have mentors, but they have others who encourage them, who help them, who push them forward. Having a great network enables you to leverage off other people's expertise. Your network's, in my mind, critical to grow your wealth, not just for who they know, but for the other people that they know. It's not who you know that matters, it's who you know matters. And I'm not stuttering.
Well, isn't it, Michael, don't you often say that, your net worth is dictated by your network? And so knowing that you've got, successful people around you, other rich people around you, wealthy people around you, and the thing that I always find this, and we find this at Wealth Retreat too, that those people who are the most successful in the room, they don't hold those success secrets close to their chest.
No, they don't, do they?
No,
they're happy to share.
Yeah, they're really, and in fact, what they want to do is they actually want to help and lift people up, as opposed to those who have a bit of a victim mentality, and what they want to do is they want to bring everybody else down to their level.
Isn't that interesting? It is one of the ways the rich people think differently. They recognise it's partly their obligation to bring others up. So, in summary, we're living in interesting times. This too shall pass. The rich are getting richer, but there's no reason why you can't. But if you want to become truly wealthy, you're going to need to open your mind. You're going to have a whole range of new ways of thinking, new ideas. You are going to have to develop new skills. You are going to have to take on a greater set of possibilities than your current abilities. It's just too hard to become wealthy from the perception, or I guess the reality, because your thoughts are your perceptions of your reality, based on lack, based on limitations. So thank you for listening to this podcast and coming back regularly. I hope you do come back regularly to this, because you're going to be able to get ideas to open your mind. And Mark, thank you for coming on twice a month on this podcast. And while we talk a lot about business in this, clearly you're a property investor yourself, and you're also one of the national directors of the Metropole group. So you understand property and business. I guess, what was it Warren Buffett who said, I'm a better investor because I'm a business person, I'm a better business person because I'm an investor?
Very true, very true. I've learned so much from both, and they meet in the middle and help with both, Michael. These conversations are always fun, actually.
So thanks, and I look forward to having another one again real soon.
Talk soon.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
In today's mindset message, I want to share a lesson I learned from one of my early mentors, the late Jim Rohn, who taught me we all have two choices that we face in life. He said each of us has two distinct choices to make about what we're going to do with our lives. The first choice we can make is to be less than we've got the capacity to be, to earn less, to have less, to read less, to think less, to try less, and discipline ourselves less. These are the choices that lead to an empty life, said Jim Rohn. These are the choices that once made lead to a life of constant apprehension instead of a life of wondrous anticipation. And the second choice? Well, the second choice, said Jim Rohn, is to do it all, to become all that we possibly can be, to read every book we possibly can, to earn as much as we possibly can, to give and share as much as we possibly can, to strive and produce and accomplish as much as we possibly can. Jim Rohn said, all of us have got the choice, to do or not to do, to be or not to be all or to be less or to be nothing at all. Jim Rohn said, like the tree, it would be a worthy challenge for us to stretch upwards and outwards to the full measure of our capabilities. Why not do all that we can, every moment we can, the best that we can, for as long as we can? Our ultimate life objective should be to create as much as our talent, our abilities and our desire will allow us to, will permit. To settle for doing less than we can is to fail at the worthiest of undertakings. Jim Rohn said the results are the best measurement of human progress. Not conversation, not explanation, not justification. Results are the measure of how you're progressing. And if our results are less than our potential suggests they should be, then we've got to strive to be more today than we were yesterday. The greatest reward, according to Jim Rohn, is always reserved for those who bring the greatest value to themselves and to the world around them as a result of who and what they've become. So Jim Rohn taught me the pathway of personal development, and that's why in each show I share with you a mindset message to help you understand how you can become a better person. And I hope today I've taught you that you've got two choices. You also face those. You can be as much as you can be or less. Which way are you heading? I hope you enjoyed my chat with Mark Creedon today. And while you're probably coming to this podcast to learn about property investment, success and money, I hope you enjoy these more mindset sessions that we have on a regular basis, because I believe if you change your way of thinking, you're going to change your life. And I'd like to read out a review I just recently received. I get lots of reviews and they're almost all 5-star, and I really appreciate when you do give me a review. I'm going to read it out because I want to say thank you to my D-Bot. I don't even know who my D-Bot is. Interesting name on Apple Podcasts, because if you want to contact me, I'd like to say thank you for leaving a review by gifting you one of my books. So email me, michael@metropole.com.au. I haven't done this for a while, but I'll do it again now and again. So if you leave a review, I'd love to say thank you. And what I'm just going to quickly do is read out what my D-Bot said, because I hope it'll give you some inspiration as well. He said, "Hey, Michael, I've accidentally come across your podcast. I've listened to quite a few episodes and made a plan to listen to one a day during my early morning walking. Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed the topics, and it made me get back to property investment after a few personal events in my life that derailed me from my reasonable progress of my property investment journey. What I'm hearing makes perfect sense. I'll start my journey again, and this time with Metropole's guidance, and look forward to meeting Rita Thomas to discuss the strategic plan." Well, gee, thank you very much for trusting us. And again, thank you for leaving a review and telling the world. And if you'd like to email me, michael@metropole.com.au, with your real name and details, I'd love to give you one of my books as my way of saying thank you. And you can, of course, leave a review wherever you listen to this podcast as well. But if you don't want to leave a review, just tell somebody about the Michael Yardney podcast. Tell somebody who you also think would benefit. Help me in my quest to make more people financially literate. We're going to be entering into some challenging times ahead, so the more people are grounded and understand what's going on, the better. Now, I'll be back again real soon. You can catch me on social media. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favorite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?